Welcome to Virtual Face-to-Face with President Bruce Jarrell. I'm Alex Lukowski, AVP for Communications. In 2019, 1 year before OpenAI released GPT-3 and opened all of our eyes to the vast possibilities of artificial intelligence, our graduate school, Dean Kenneth Wong, wrote this. Combat casualty care is a subfield of emergency medicine that requires intense situational awareness, encyclopedic knowledge, split-second decision-making, and high-performing technology. Training medics with these skills requires much time and effort. Yet even with the best training, medics can experience numerous challenges. Artificial intelligence could offer numerous positive benefits in combat casualty care, but it also has significant drawbacks and pitfalls. And given that context, it would be beneficial to develop a system for guiding research and development efforts in this arena. Of course, 5 years later, higher education is now wrestling with some form of that issue in every discipline. How do we develop systems to incorporate AI in research and education? I should add that Wong's also researched the use of speech recognition in combat casualty care, among other things. And about 2 years after that first writing, he and two colleagues proposed a pathway for the use of AI in future radiology diagnostics, even beyond the currently employed model of deep learning convolutional neural networks. In summary, they wrote, we predict that AIs will facilitate the merging of disparate medical and scientific domains into an integrated diagnostic service for personalized precision medicine. Sounds familiar? And Kenneth Wong has been researching and teaching on the cutting edge of medical technology his whole career. As a research professor at the Department of Physics at Virginia Tech, he studied medical imaging, radiation therapy, image-guided interventions, and applications of machine learning in those fields. And before coming to UMB, Wong served as Associate Dean of Virginia Tech's graduate school in the National Capital Region, where he was also director of the Northern Virginia Center in Falls Church, and was instrumental in the creation of the Qualcomm VT Think-A-Bit Lab. Think-A-Bit combines career exploration and instruction in electronics, coding, engineering, artistic design, aimed primarily at middle school students. For the last 6 months, Dr. Wong has been tackling a new challenge, of course, as Dean of the University of Maryland Graduate School. And if you're not fully familiar with the graduate school, that challenge is deeper and broader than you might expect. The school has PhD programs from biomedical sciences to molecular medicine to oral and experimental pathology, master's programs from forensic science and gerontology to global health and pharmacometrics, and certificate programs that include aging, integrative health, social entrepreneurship, and a lot more. And the landscape is constantly changing in response to the need. A great example of that is the recently introduced master's degree in diversity, equity, and inclusion leadership. And I don't want to forget to mention our very high profile physician assistant program and the GRID, the Graduate Research Innovation District. If you haven't lived here, you've watched a GRID pitch. That's where students connect to bring innovative health and social impact ideas to life through education, entrepreneurial resources, and programming. Like I said, it's a lot, and keeping track of that wide academic spectrum is just the beginning. Adapting to technology like large language models is a growing issue, as are concerns about affordability and student debt that's outpacing wage growth, overcoming equity challenges and the impact of historic discrimination, shrinking graduate level enrollment, and even job market challenges, certainly in academic positions, and also in some oversupplied research sectors. Now, the good news is that as loaded as he is with technical prowess, Dr. Wong puts a premium on being accessible and being a mentor. At his candidate town hall last year, he told the audience, I think getting an education is really different from buying a cheeseburger or selecting a pair of shoes. And so I really like to think of students as investors and people who are going to be with us for the long term. I don't want them to simply be happy with what's happening right in front of them right now. But I want them to say 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 20 years down the road, I had a great experience at UMB and it really spoke to me. It helped me along the way. So welcome, Dean Wong. And to the audience, you'll have a chance to ask your questions about the dean, the graduate school, the future, or anything else in a little while. Don't wait to write your questions in the chat area. We always want to hear directly from you. But if you want to remain anonymous, that's okay. Please let me know that. Now, with all that out of the way, please welcome our host and president, Dr. Bruce Jarrell.
Good afternoon, everyone. And Alex, thank you for that introduction. Dean Wong, it's a pleasure to have you on our face-to-face show this week. But you've been here now several months, but you've had to transition from Northern Virginia to Baltimore. You're seeing the graduate school really in its inner workings now for several months. Tell us what you're seeing. Where are the big opportunities? What are the things that are working well, and where are the other areas we could do better?
Well, thank you. It's a privilege to be here today. It's been a really great experience for me to get to know the graduate school and to get to know UMB. One of the things that I really valued is the opportunity to be back in a health sciences environment. It's a lot like where I was in graduate school, and so it has a great feel to it. And just to realize the rich diversity of what is going on here. It seems like every week I turn around, there is something new and exciting from the great work that is going on across the university that really appeals to me and is, it satisfies my intellectual curiosity, it helps build up my sense of purpose, and kind of informs all the work that we're doing in the graduate school. I think the graduate school has a lot of opportunities right now. We are aggressive and expansionistic and nimble, and we also have at a core the support of graduate students across the university in many different fields. And so our goal is really to try to do both of those things well, is to be a place of growth, a place of innovation, a place of new programs, and as well a support for students across the university and programs across the university.
So like any graduate school, you serve many masters because I guess all of the schools save law have PhD or PhD programs, and law even has a few master's degree programs. So tell me how it's different interacting with the different schools and students from those different schools.
So I find that each of them come to the graduate school with kind of their own perspectives and expectations. And in many cases, a lot of their identity, especially if they're in a research lab, for example, is going to be tied up with the lab that they're part of. And that's very common for graduate students because particularly when you're working on your doctorate, you're very specialized in an area and you tend to put a lot of your focus in that. And so part of my part of my goal as being part of the graduate school is to hopefully intentionally pull people out of that and to give them the chance to interact with others across different disciplines and have a chance for interprofessional education in a slightly different way than what we think about for the professional schools. But to say, get a PhD student who is working in one area to talk to PhD students in other areas. We had a really great conversation among students last semester where some students came just to have lunch with us in the graduate school. And one of them was talking about a challenge they were having in their lab. And the other student said, "Oh, I'm familiar with that area. We should talk about this." And there was a very animated technical conversation, which went completely over my head. But the students got a lot out of it, and they were really helping each other, which was great.
Yeah, well, I got to think it's a transition for you going from one school to another.
Mhm.
Because in Northern Virginia, you were mostly science schools, or did you have non-science schools there too?
We did. We had a large business program and as well education and some of the programs that existed in our College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences at Tech. So it was a pretty good mix. Definitely not the full breadth of the university, but a pretty good mix of what the university had to offer. It was very targeted, as you might imagine, to the kinds of degrees that we thought would be effective in that area. And that's something that I definitely bringing forward to my time at UMB is understanding more of what the workforce needs are in this part of the country and in this particular kind of tech sector and how UMB can help address those.
So maybe focus on Northern Virginia for a couple of minutes. So it seems to me this all started with Amazon wanting to move its headquarters, but you may correct me on that. So, when did the move of Virginia Tech to have graduate programs in the Northern Virginia occur, and what was the relationship of the big giant Amazon moving in there? How do you view that whole world?
Yeah, so the Northern Virginia operation for Virginia Tech got started in 1969. And so it's been there quite a long time. And originally, it had a very small footprint, and they would actually fly faculty up to teach classes. So the faculty would fly up, they would teach classes from like 7 to 10 at night. They would fly back. They were given special considerations to not have 8 a.m. classes the next day. as part of that responsibility. So it was very much kind of an extension in a physical way of the campus. And then as technology improved, we began to do more distance learning, and we had satellite links and some of the very early technology that enabled that to happen. So what happened when the Amazon deal came through was that Virginia Tech was part of that from the beginning, really involved in the negotiations with Amazon and the state. And it was really a part of the plan to bring Amazon into Northern Virginia. And so what that did was it accelerated a lot of the plans that we had as a university then. So it took the kinds of things that we were hoping to do and really, put in a lot of infusion of energy to make some of those things happen very, very quickly.
It's been an interesting phenomenon. I've been told, this may or may not be correct, but I've been told that one of the major attractors of Amazon to Northern Virginia was the involvement of the higher education institutions and the creation of workforce, et cetera. Whereas in Maryland, the bid was much more around infrastructure and some tax structures, but higher education was less so involved. Do you have any insight on all of that?
Yeah, that's certainly my understanding of it as well, in that a key part of it was the fact that we were going to stand up this new campus, and that's the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus. And it was related to very tightly to computer science and computer engineering. So if you look at the development of that campus, how it's been initially staffed, its faculty, it's really focused around that workforce, and particularly a master's degree in engineering, which is different from the typical Masters of Science in Computer Science, in that it's a very much a professionally focused degree. So yes, there was a very large workforce component as part of that economic development deal.
Yeah, and I guess Amazon has brought significant economic benefit to the state of Virginia. At least one would guess that that's happening, although I don't know that directly. Maybe a question for you is, what's the lesson we've learned in Maryland, and where's our next opportunity like that going to come from?
Well, I don't know that there's going to be an economic development play quite like that one. Everyone always said this was like the play of the century in the economic development world. But I do think that question about workforce is really a vital one. And in that sense, Maryland is well equipped to make that kind of play in the future. We have a lot of great institutions that are at the leading edge of technology and research, as well as the ability to scale up large programs that can meet workforce needs. So I think that approach of having an integrated economic development that looks at a lot of different sectors can be both distinguishing for Maryland and help to change kind of the dynamic, like you were saying about economic development, that it's more than tax incentives and the availability of green space, for example.
So here you are at the helm of a graduate school. Obviously, workforce development. Most of us like to say when we give an education, we're not just doing workforce. Obviously, we're giving people skills for a lifetime. But what are the big opportunities when you look at the Maryland landscape of, let's say, master's degree or other degrees that we haven't developed yet that we should be developing? Or what's the opportunity there?
I think for us, particularly at UMB, the construct I have in my mind is health followed by a blank space. So what do we put after health? Do we put things like finance? Do we put things like economics? Do we put information technology? Do we put transportation, facilities? There's all kinds of things that relate to the business of providing health and the way that we provide a healthy society that are not direct professions. And that's an area where the graduate school can, I think, contribute greatly, is in developing programs around that. We know as one of the great challenges of our society right now that we're looking at this continuing aging of society that's going to lead to this unprecedented population inversion, and being able to be prepared for that. A good colleague of mine who was working with us when we were developing electronic record systems, he said, fundamentally, we need to raise an army. And I think that's one of the places we are in the health sciences and the health professions, is we need to we need to raise an army. We need to get people trained to meet this coming need that everybody agrees is out there. We just have to get prepared for it.
Right. Makes sense to me. It's all in the execution, isn't it? And figuring out how to do degrees like that. Um, Now, of course, my buddies who are virtually sitting next to me in the schools of social work and law would say to me, well, wait a minute, what about us? So what about them?
So I think there's a lot of opportunity for interdisciplinary work to bring those in. I know I had a great conversation with the dean of the School of Social Work, and she said social workers are everywhere where problems exist in our society, and I thought that was really kind of a brilliant example or a way to sort of crystallize what their school is about. And similarly with the law school, um, we have a very successful interdisciplinary course this semester on climate change that is involving people from faculty from law, faculty from medicine, faculty from nursing, the graduate school, and bringing students from some of those schools together as well. So I think there will be a lot of great opportunities for them to contribute as we form these intentionally transdisciplinary communities. Yeah, so I definitely don't want to leave any of our schools out because there's so much that we can contribute here having this environment. It's really a unique benefit to being in this place.
Yeah, I remind our listeners to get your questions into Alex. That the comment of climate change, of course, reminded me of this fascinating study that our School of Medicine did, looking at the Canadian wildfires and the ominous cloud that drifted over Maryland, and being able to correlate air quality findings with people and their lung health and turning up in emergency rooms with pulmonary or cardiac problems. It's a powerful technology, and you look at that's geosensors along with health data, huge opportunities to make big developments.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we're in the middle of that. I think we are. But anyhow, so in terms of being concrete, uh, do you have specific on your horizon the next couple of years what you're foreseeing in terms of new graduate programs or shoring up existing programs?
I think where I'm more concrete is the idea of shoring up existing programs because we've had a period of sort of rapid expansion. We have a lot of different programs in innovative areas, and I want to make sure that they're on a very solid financial footing for growth, to the right size that they should be. I think some programs we have the capability to make them very, very large, hundreds of students enrolled. Some programs will be more of a niche program. And so we want to be able to make sure that we can support those at different scales, grow the ones which are really capable of growth and make sure that the ones which need a different kind of financial model are also supported. Because there's some things that we will do that I think are particularly important, which may not have necessarily huge enrollments in the future. So shoring up the ones that we have, I think, is my big priority, and then starting ones as we find the right opportunities.
So one thing that Alex mentioned in his introduction was the Think a Bit Lab.
Mhm.
Virginia Tech Qualcomm Think a Bit Lab. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And if you will, connect it to the kinds of programs that we have here for our students in middle and high school.
Mhm. Yeah, so the program began as an initiative of Qualcomm, the technology corporation. And so they built the very first lab in their corporate headquarters out in San Diego. And when they were looking for partners to expand to the East Coast, partly to be close to Washington, D.C., but partly because that was an area that, was not served well by this lab, um, they worked with Virginia Tech. We formed a partnership to bring this into existence, and it has been very successful, partly because of the idea of the program. The program was very timely in terms of teaching people skills about coding, introducing students to careers that they didn't know existed, giving people a broad understanding of technology. but also because of the people who were involved in it. In particular, the director of the lab came out of the K-12 space, had a lot of experience and connections in that world. So he had a lot of credibility among other educators that I think you really need when you're working in a space where you don't necessarily have a lot of expertise. Like my expertise is not in K through 12. So it was really important to have someone who had that broad expertise and connections. And I think for us at UMB, it's a very good example of how a resource can attract people into the university for a particular task. So the way the Think a Bit curriculum was set up was that middle schools would come in the morning, they would have some career exploration, they would do some electronics, and then they would be done. It was kind of like a field trip. So that's something that has a fairly short residence time, but has a long impact as the students return to their schools and as the teachers return to their schools. The other thing that we did with that was we also had teacher education programs. So it was really working directly with students and with teachers. So I think for the lesson for us is if we're going to work within that space or a similar space, we want a vertically integrated approach where we're reaching people at kind of different stages and parts of the organization. Um, for K through 12, it's reaching everyone from the students to the teachers to the superintendents and sometimes even the parents, to have a very successful program that people were involved in.
How many students were involved? What was the scope of it?
So it would typically see about 3,000 students in a typical year. So the students would come, as, your typical school size is like, your middle school class, 25, 26. So that's how many would come on a day. And then it operated pretty much all year long.
Okay, one last comment before we get to our questions. I know you all heard what Dean Wong said about they would fly up from Virginia Tech and back down. So I guess you have a corporate jet there. Our corporate jet is called My Chevy Volt. That's about as far as it goes. So was that a luxury or a necessity in terms of Blacksburg to Northern Virginia?
I think it's kind of a necessity given where Blacksburg is. It's a bit more remote than being in Northern Virginia. There is a commercial airport in Roanoke, but it's not a large airport. And so I think the decision was made some time ago that they needed to have some more air travel capabilities because of where they were located. It's not something I ever rode on, but I heard a lot about it.
Well, I wouldn't hold my breath up here. I don't think we're going to get one of those.
Yeah. Well, the faculty, one of them did tell me a story about how a window blew out, one night coming home on the plane, and so that was kind of harrowing. But everybody was fine in the end. So it's not all luxury travel.
All right, Alex, you got some questions.
I was just going to say that wasn't a Boeing plane, was it?
I don't think so. But
that was a cheap shot. I should have said that.
Cheap shot.
We have questions from just about every school right now, which is interesting because before the program we were talking about, where how will it break down, and they're from all over the place. So we'll start you off with an easy one, and I'll bring in Andy Coop. Andy, go ahead, turn your mic on. And
Wong, President Jarrell, nice to be here. Nice to hear you talking. My question, hopefully, is a relatively easy one. It's about branding. We have a unique graduate school that I think is the best in the whole of the USA. I really do. But part of it is how do we brand it and market to differentiate ourselves from these other graduate programs? What's your vision there?
Oh, Ken, that's a good one.
That's a good one. That is. I agree with you. And I think you're right. We really are unique and special as graduate schools go. A lot of our effort around communications has been very, I'd say very tactical in terms of how do we design recruitment information and get messages out to prospective students. And I think that was the right approach as we were growing and building a lot of these programs because we really needed to focus on that area. So my goal I would say the near future is to develop kind of a more strategic communications approach that talks about the stories of the graduate school. We can certainly use that information in our recruiting and working with prospective student efforts, but really communicating the nature of the graduate school, this idea that it does, it does two things very well. You know, it has these two sides that are in balance. I use this example of the yin and the yang as a way of thinking about that they're complementary to each other rather than opposing natures of the graduate school, and getting those messages across about fundamentally what we are, why we're different, and what benefit that has for students who are coming in for us. And I'll say, Andy, to be honest, like, I'm very impressed with the School of Pharmacy's communications efforts, and so I'm planning to steal a lot of what you have been doing as a school. I probably would say that about all the schools here. Like, there's a lot of good work going on in that space.
But Andy, one of the things you point out, and maybe for the audience to emphasize, is that yes, we have a very traditional graduate school with PhD programs in the biomedical and social sciences, but we've also, over the last decade or so, developed a whole entrepreneurial aspect to the graduate school, which involves professional master's degrees, certificates, degrees that are not traditionally in the biomedical or social sciences, but yet are important to our local community. So I think part of the uniqueness is that we've taken on that particular topic. And if you do look around the university system of Maryland, you won't find that kind of entrepreneurial graduate school by and large. There's touches of it here and there, but not to the extent which we've taken on here. So you're right, we need to brand it better. I think that's a discussion we need to get into, but maybe not today. So, Alex.
All right. Well, now we're going to get into the more meaty topics. I'm going to bring in Shil Desarma from medicine. Wants to ask about something you brought up a little bit earlier. Go ahead, Shil.
Yes.
Go ahead. You can ask your question.
It's great to hear the conversation today. Dean Wong, you mentioned early on in your opening remarks about interprofessional education, and could you comment a bit further on how you see what value and opportunities exist for interprofessional education on campus, especially given that we have so many professional programs that are so great? How do you see interprofessional education working with such a large number of great professional programs?
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for the question. And I want to particularly comment, Dr. Desarma is part of the faculty team that put together this climate change course that I was talking about earlier. So I really want to give him kudos for that, because it's kind of an ideal situation for a leader where you have a number of faculty who have kind of come together and coalesced on their own to create something great. And now it's I think it's my responsibility and the graduate school's responsibility to nurture that and build it up forward. In terms of how we support interprofessional education, to me, there's definitely an important human component of that, of making sure that there's a regular exchange of faculty and ideas and leadership across the schools here at UMB, and kind of building that collaborative relationship. I always want the graduate school to be seen as a place where different schools can come together and share ideas. And even if that idea is kind of nascent or they need some way to figure it out, the graduate school has resources to help them do that. And going forward, to create a structure that actually helps some of these ideas grow, like an academic incubator, that knows that there are certain things that an early stage program needs that are different from a mature program, and has specialized ability to do that. And then I think the other part is working directly with students and encouraging them to think about these opportunities and to really take advantage of what is here at UMB that is not, that they would not necessarily get at a standalone school or a school that didn't have the kinds of professional schools that we have mixed together.
Hi, Shil. I got to say hi. I haven't heard your name since COVID. I hope you're doing well. Sounds like it.
Thanks so much, Dean Wong, and thanks, Dr. Jarrell. And it's great to hear about your Volt. You're still driving it?
Yeah, into the ground. Shil.
I had to get one too. So
Okay, well, thank you for that, Jill. Alex, you there? Did we lose Alex for a minute?
He just looks like he's on mute, so just the two of us.
Okay, if I guess we don't wait for Alex, he'll come back on. Ken, we started talking about AI in education.
Mhm.
You must have a few ideas on where you think that should go and how it ought to be regulated. What's sort of your take on that while we wait for Alex?
Yeah, I've really been very pleased with how engaged the faculty in the graduate school and across the university are in some of these questions around AI. Like we have some faculty working groups on this topic and people that meet fairly regularly. And there's a program called Monday Morning Mentor, which is run out of our Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning that has a number of AI topics in it. My thought on that is we're really kind of challenged in graduate school because so much of how we measure learning is in the written word. You think about what is the product that a PhD student produces. Ultimately, there's research, but really there's this dissertation that's the summation of all the things that you've done as a graduate student. It's a big written work, and helping students to understand how they can use AI well to help them with the kinds of things they do, but still maintain what the field expects for scholarly integrity, I think is going to be a big challenge for us to do well as a graduate school, and to kind of set both the right boundaries, but also the right encouragement so that people can make the best use of these tools as they do their research, as they try to understand a field. I will often use Microsoft Copilot, which is sort of the one that the one that's part of Microsoft, so it's in this walled garden of the university. When I have a topic I don't know a lot about, I'll ask for some information, so that gives me a little bit of an overview, or maybe it helps me see things from a different perspective. And I hope it can be a really useful tool for both our students and our faculty and staff going forward. And I'd say the other thing that I think is that we want to have kind of a humane automation. I want to. The promise of AI is that it will sort of free us from the tasks that are boring or tedious, or we think about as being drudgery, and allow us to focus on the human interactions. And I think it's a really good way to think about how we implement this tool to make sure that we're serving people efficiently, from a kind of customer service standpoint, but not losing that ability for the human touch and to really understand what it is that might be behind a person's inquiry. If a student particularly is asking about something, it's always important for us to listen for what that other context might be. Maybe there's some other challenge they're having in their life that's really behind the struggle they're having in a class, for example.
Right. Alex said he's having trouble with networking, so we're going to have to wing it here until he gets back in, and hopefully he'll be able to text me some questions from the audience because I can't see the questions from here. So please tolerate with us a little bit. And I want to just finish on AI. So are there any examples in education that we're using AI or any value that we're currently bringing to the table for our students in that area?
So I think it's happening in kind of a diffuse way across the university. The sense I get from talking to the faculty is a lot of them are experimenting with it. They're using it to help build educational materials, to help critique educational materials, and they all want to improve their teaching. I think that's the unified thread that I get from many of the faculty. And because a lot of teaching is about creating content, it's not the only part, but a lot of it is about creating content. How can they use these tools to create that content very efficiently and in ways that are engaging to students? One of the challenges in kind of instructional design and materials is that students, particularly the current generation of students, they have come to expect multimedia and presentations and the kinds of things that you might find in cinema or television production. So kind of the level of that information game has gone up, and our faculty are working hard in leveraging this technology to help up their own game and be providing the most compelling kind of resources that they can.
All right, so I got some questions from Alex. So these are
Okay.
from the audience again. So
Right.
I'll read them. Dean Wong, what are some of the challenges you expect future graduates of the graduate school to face when they enter the workforce? And how are you, as a leader in the school, expecting the school to prepare them for this challenge? And so this is workforce preparation and what we're doing to help them be more prepared.
Yeah. So one of the things that I kind of fall back on is this concept that training prepares you for the known and education prepares you for the unknown. And so my hope is that we can build that education for the unknown into all of our graduate programs so that our students are well prepared. One of the areas where I think where this is particularly notable is in the way we think about doctoral education. Doctoral education really is targeted at creating future academics in many cases. But we have to think more broadly than that, because we know from the number of positions that are available and what students are doing that many of them are not going into academic positions. So if we are not preparing for students for that, then I think we're kind of doing them a disservice. And it's important for us, as much as we look at kind of the workforce needs and what kind of programs might we create in the future, it's also important for us to be getting feedback of what are some of the skill needs coming out of the workforce, and how do we modify to adjust to those and meet those needs. I mean, I think that was part of why the grid was created, was we saw this need for people who would think entrepreneurially and think about innovation and product design and the kinds of skills that come with that, and trying to then integrate that into the curriculum, not necessarily in everything, but for those students who felt like they needed that option, this became a very powerful option for them. And I think that's a good model for us to use.
What about internships, externships, time with corporate entities? How sophisticated are we in providing that for our students, those opportunities?
So I think there are very good pockets for that around the school. I don't think it's being done sort of across all of our programs the way that we might want it to be done. And I think there, what we need is we need very good partners, who are willing to work with our students. And in some cases, the ideal situation is you want those partners to come into the university. And I think, when I think of environments where that can happen, I think about places like the biopark. And really, because UMB is very compact, it makes it easy for us to potentially bring people in and then give the students capstone projects or research projects related to a course where they have the benefit of faculty mentorship and a problem statement or a challenge that is given to them from on the outside. So that's in my mind, it's a really good model for how we train students and prepare them for some of these challenges in the workforce by giving them actual challenges that are coming in from industry partners or organization partners, for example, like, the Department of Health or people who specialize in aging.
Okay. We're still missing Alex. Alex, we hope you make it back. Two other questions here. I'll read one first. What are your thoughts about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the graduate school, and what plans have you thought about to implement within the graduate school? And of course, that extends to the university as well, but for the moment, for the graduate school.
Mm-hmm. So I think we have a real kind of gem within the graduate school, in that we have a desire among all of our faculty and staff to strongly support diversity, equity, and inclusion as a school, and to really think about how our curriculum is infused with that at every level. I think one of the encouraging things for me has been, when I talk to the faculty and staff, people are very excited about this work, and they're really not looking at it as kind of this is something we have to comply with. This is a box we need to check. But they're really thinking very deeply about how the curriculum reflects diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that can be improved. And so we have that, and then we have this program which is specifically related to diversity, equity, and inclusion leadership. And so the combination of this external focus and this internal focus is, I think, a unique opportunity to create a virtuous cycle between those two, where the kinds of challenges that we're seeing within the graduate school or within the university, they potentially inform the curriculum, and the kinds of feedback that we're getting from students in this curriculum and our alumni as they go out into the world and face different challenges, that feeds back into both the curriculum and the internal way that the graduate school operates. So I think there's a lot of rich possibilities for us here. And for me personally, this is just a very important topic because, when I look over our history, when I see the kinds of things that have happened with the structures that our society has built, it's pretty clear to me that the deck has not been, or the playing field has not been even for a long time. And for us to undo that harm, to make that playing field truly level and give everyone the kind of opportunity that I think we as a society want to provide, to be truly the land of opportunity that the United States is. We need to reconcile with this sort of fundamental disparities that have happened and work to change that.
Okay, I wish I could do follow-up, but I still don't have Alex or the speaker here, so I'll go to the next question.
Okay.
This is a question about our graduate school, and what program do you think has the greatest potential to grow into a larger, more effective program? That's a little hard, a little difficult of a question, isn't it? You have to pick and choose, don't you?
Well, I used the line in one of my previous positions. I said it's kind of like asking me which of my children I love the best. It's always a tough question. I think that our program in health professions education really has a lot of potential room to expand because that area is very, very large, and because it ties so closely to the missions of all the schools here. I mean, I guess you could argue with the exception of law and social work, but even there, I think there are lessons from health professions education, because what I've seen for HPE in particular is I've drawn parallels between what HPE talks about and what, from my background, engineering education talks about. Like, how do we
Better tell people what HPE is.
Oh, sorry, health professions education, right? That idea of very closely and carefully interrogating our educational systems and asking what really helps students learn, what really helps students retain information, what are really effective ways to do this kind of teaching and learning. That's a very broad subject, and that has, I think, a lot of applicability across everything that we do as an educational institution. It can sometimes seem like it's a little bit self-focused, but given that we are involved in education at so many levels, like really looking at that education as a process and as a way, as a thing that we can improve upon, is very valuable for all the things that we do. So I think there's a lot of growth potential there.
So the growth potential, let me see if I can restate it and then you confirm this. So growth potential in the process of learning how to teach better.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that specific education, the health professions education is obviously focused on a specific sector like engineering education is, but that broad question of how do we do this education really well, I think has a great potential to expand in the future.
So for the audience, it must have been 10 years ago, Dr. Ward and I and Dr. Perman set up this Center for Teaching and Learning.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Christina Sestone came to lead it from Drexel. It really prepared us to learn how to design courses to meet certain objectives and then to help people execute them so that they could teach really good programs. That center, I think, has helped all schools. It's been I think, a very effective program on this campus. It has led to several other things. One of them was what Dean Wong mentioned, the HPE, the Health Professions Education, which started out as a PhD for those of us who are health related, never had a lick of pedagogy. And so this allows us to learn how to teach as better as teachers. And so that PhD now is a quite large program. I think I remember maybe 40 students or more being enrolled in that now, one of the larger in the country. And it's really meeting the niche of providing faculty members for future roles in the different professions. Alex, we got you back, really?
There's a network problem at the library. I tried everything. So I feel like I was in purgatory. I'm on my phone using the over-the-air signal. So
We're glad to have you back.
sorry to leave you hanging there.
Well, let me finish
There are questions, though.
Okay, well, maybe jump to your questions. Go ahead. Uh-oh. Well, let me finish what we were talking about. The health professions education led to a doctorate and then a master's to give people credentials to teach. And so it's been a really very popular program. There aren't many in the country along those lines. And so those of you out in the audience who don't know about this, you should find out about it because it's a great opportunity. Do we have you back again, Alex?
I don't know. I hope so. We have a question if you want it.
Oh,
All
take
right.
it, please.
Well, I'm going to read it, even though I would normally put her up, but it's Christina Sistone who asks, says, educational research and enhanced educational process. Yes, HPE. Thanks for seeing the program's value, Dean Wong. So that's more of a, exclamation than a question, but you might want to amplify what you just said.
Yeah, and I think what has been very interesting to me, like not being familiar with the program when I arrived, is understanding sort of how far its reach is and how much the faculty are really committed to this idea of not just working with other faculty to create great instruction, but really working with students. Because ultimately, if you think about how you design a program in education, there are these two sides. There's people who are teaching and people who are learning, and really wanting that kind of whole and synthetic involvement from both sides, and creating very thoughtful, I think, programs, and encouraging students to really do intensive research in that area, and again, be very thoughtful about their audience, the kinds of projects they're proposing, and where the impact is going to be.
Alex, let's try another.
Don't have another one. And I don't know while I was out whether anyone talked about sustainability. I know you're a big sustainability guy, and I was surprised we had an earlier question from someone in sustainability who didn't ask about it. Is there anything that you're looking forward to being involved in on that front?
Yeah, I think that was actually one of the ideas that I had when I was talking about this concept of health blank after it, is thinking about sustainability, because healthcare as an enterprise, I think, as many of us know, consumes a lot of resources, and I think has a lot of unique needs. And how do we do that in a way that is as sustainable as we can make it? And also just thinking about taking a step back, how do we create a society where we can think about some of these needs in advance, thinking about the concept of prevention versus cure. Like, if we have a challenge within our healthcare system in terms of sustainability and the use of environmental resources, are there ways that we can step back and look at the broader scope of healthcare to address some of these sustainability questions? I read a great article recently about an organization that encourages sort of purposeful rule breaking to try to create efficiencies and get rid of waste in get rid of process waste in organizations, like things that we probably don't really need to be doing anymore, or no one can remember why we do them or what the rationale was for it. And I think looking at sustainability in that way is a very useful frame, because are there certain things that we are doing as an institution or as a unit that really could be done a different way to have a sustainability impact?
Alex? It really doesn't work on the wireless very well, does it?
You can only do so much.
You can only do so much, and I think we lost our ability there. Maybe to close up, Ken, in terms of just generally, how many people are in the graduate school? How many full-time faculty do you have? Tell people how much you've grown in that area over the last, before you got here and now. How big is the faculty with primary appointments in the graduate school?
So our entire sort of mailing list for faculty and staff in the graduate school is just over 120 people. And I would say about, half of those are in the staff category and half of those in the faculty category. So it's really been a very large growth, considering that many graduate schools, like for example, the graduate school that I came from, and I think this is the far more common model, they essentially have no faculty, because their faculty may be on loan from another department, but they really aren't. They really aren't creating their own courses, their own programs. So that part is very unique, and it's been quite the level of growth. And we're still grappling with some of the big issues around that, about faculty promotion, faculty appointment. There's a question about tenure for the graduate school, because it doesn't exist in the graduate school right now, and I think that's something that we're going to have to wrestle with as we grow. But I like to think of us as being a small but mighty department. We're pretty focused, and we will continue, I think, to grow where the opportunities are available, and find those right niches for us as this intentionally transdisciplinary space.
Yeah, one area where we grew very significantly was in physician assistant education. In 2013, we aligned with Anne Arundel Community College. They had a PA program, but they needed a higher level degree granting institution as a partner. And then in 2022, I believe, the entire program ended up being moved here. This was the accreditor driving a push toward a master's in higher degree granting institutions. And so we now have a pretty large PA program.
Yep.
And again, so many people, I think, don't know about this new program. Maybe in our closing minutes or two, you can talk about where those students come from, and where they go, and what have been the challenges of running a physician assistant program.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating experience for me, because I'm very forward with the people in the PA program that I really didn't know much about the profession when I first learned about this opportunity, and I've tried to study up quickly and get up to speed. I think one of the really great things about the program, as well as one of our challenges, is that it is very, very intensive. So the students are learning a lot in a short amount of time. There's a lot of demands on them in both the didactic year, and then we send them out into the clinic. They need preceptors, they need places where they can learn. And so it's a lot for the students, and it's a lot for our faculty. And I really commend them for all working very hard to provide this very compressed curriculum, and making it quite outstanding among the programs that we have. One of the statistics that I was really appreciative of that we have is that about 50% of our graduates are working in underserved areas of the state. So in some cases, this may be areas that are rural. In some cases, this may be areas that are primarily serving marginalized populations. But I think it shows a commitment of our graduates to really go into the places where there is need across the state. And we're working very hard to keep as many of those graduates in the state and contributing to the healthcare environment here as we can. Part of that through the other programs that we offer in the PA space, the Leadership Academy, the Doctor of Medical Science. we really believe there's a lot of opportunities, again, for us to be addressing the needs of physician assistants in a vertically integrated way. So no matter where you are in your career as a physician assistant, UMB probably has something for you that can benefit you and help you to advance in that space.
One of the programs we started 4 or 5 or 6, I lose track of the time, a number of years ago, was a physician assistant lifetime learning academy, PALA, we call it.
Yep. 5-year anniversary this year.
5-year, and we got state funding for that. And what it does is provide support to all of the PA's training programs in the state, of which there are UMES, Towson, Frostburg, ourselves, and
Notre Dame.
And Notre Dame, to provide them with opportunities for practicing PAs to come learn how, again, to teach better and then go back to their program as faculty members. So it's a commitment to development statewide PA education.
Yes.
So,
and they have a very good report that they have just published, kind of a
just
5
read it. Yes, just read it.
And forward-thinking ideas for the PA profession.
Yeah. Sure. So, Alex, I guess go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, can I slide in one last, a good ending point? That is, Patty Alvarez is very sharp, and she knew to send me a text with a question. We couldn't get through. See, it pays to be surrounded by smart people. But she says, her perception is that, you've been to all kinds of events all over campus, met with lots of people, which is great, and the kind of thing that you would want to do at this stage of your tenure here. But what have you learned along the way? What impressions do you have of the students? And I'll just leave it there. What impression do you have of the students after all that?
In 3 minutes, Ken. In 3 minutes.
I've really enjoyed it. Just for me to be out and to talk to students in lots of different situations, and to hear some of their stories and the kinds of things that they're concerned about, or even just talking about, is really very informative and enjoyable for me. And one of the other aspects that I've gotten some contact with students, it's not so much interactive, but I've tried to go to a number of the PhD defenses that come up on the graduate school's calendar. And I benefit from the fact that many of these defenses are now broadcast using Zoom or WebEx. So I don't necessarily have to get to a physical location. It's good when I can, but I can listen in essentially as people are giving their presentations. And it's been really enjoyable to hear the students talk about the people that inspired them, the mentorship relationship they have with the faculty, which I think for a PhD student is just a very special thing. The role of their family, the role of their friends, the role of their faith in propelling them along and sustaining them in this career. And so I'm very my heart is warmed by those kinds of stories and hearing from the students. And I hope that we as the graduate school can continue to help students thrive. And I can get a chance to hear a lot more of those stories directly from students as we go along.
Great. Well, first of all, Ken, thank you very much for being on with us.
Thank you.
Alex, thank you for being on intermittently. Maybe next but it was,
I don't know what happened with the EduRoam network here, but I guess I'll report it to someone.
Yeah, report it to some. Don't report it to me, okay?
Okay.
Because I can't fix it. So, in any event, I thank our audience for being here, and thank all of our participants, and look forward to seeing you at the next one of these. Thanks you, and see you next time.
All right. Thank you.